Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the All In for Kansas Kids bi-weekly webinar on December 15th, 2021. So I am Debbie Deere, and I am the Early Childhood Systems Coordinator for the Kansas Children's Cabinet and Trust Fund. And I thank you for joining with me today on your noon hour to learn what is happening around the state in the field of early childhood. I also want to thank Clayton Gerard from KCCTO, who is with us today and helping me navigate the logistics of the webinar in the absence of my planning partner, Hannah McGahey. So for today's agenda, we are going to share our routine general updates with you on opportunities that are available around the state of Kansas. And I also want to note that during the slide presentation, each of the informational slides includes the caption on how the information being discussed ties back to the All In for Kansas Kids strategic plan goals and strategies. For our program today, we will have Lori Kravitz and Haley Henick with CDA, and they're going to be sharing information on their CDA or their Child Development Associates program, as well as scholarship opportunities that they have available for that. And then we have the team from Our Tomorrows who will be here to conduct a new mini sense making session with us. So to start off our general announcements, the Child Care for Every Family Network is a new collaborative effort that has recently formed. And this network is of diverse organizations. It was brought together by a passion for building an equitable childcare system that works for everyone. And a broad cross-section of childcare leaders were dissatisfied with how childcare in America doesn't work for those who need it the most. And they agreed that it was time for a new kind of justice-centered collaboration, and thus the network was born. The CC4EN, which it's called, is sponsored by Child Care Aware of America, the Center for Law and Social Policy, and the National Women's Law Center, among others. And so you can go to this link here to learn more about this new collaboration. And I just want to let you know too that I did go ahead and put all of the links to what I'm referencing during the general updates in the chat before I started. Moving on, developing and sustaining effective parent advisory committees training has been made available. I was made aware of this while I was in a family leadership team meeting recently. And so for those of you here that work with parents in your programs, this upcoming training opportunity is something that you might be interested in. And this training is offered by the National Family Support Network and will cover topics on how can an active parent advisory committee enhance a program's work with families, what steps are needed to create and sustain an effective parent advisory committee, and why should programs share decision-making with program participants. And so registration is available at this link, and the deadline for that is January 11th. And there is a cost involved here of $175. And for any of you who did receive the document that I sent out in the email yesterday with the links on it, this one was not included because I did not have that on there. So you might want to make sure that you get that from the chat today. The Kansas Racial Equity Collaboration is a statewide effort to understand the history of racial inequalities in child welfare and to define the problem through a shared language, and so that we can all advocate for racial equity. And this collaborative has some virtual lectures and debriefs available in January and February, which are listed here. And so if you are interested in learning more about this collaborative or want to register for these events, you can go to the links provided. Open enrollment for Marketplace healthcare coverage started on November 1st and is available with 2 deadlines, one being today, and that coverage would start on January 1st, and then an extended enrollment deadline of January 15th with that coverage starting on February 1st. So the Administration for Children and Families is working to help the early childhood workforce access coverage during this open enrollment period. So be sure to go to the links in the chat for more information on how to enroll, and to include a link to the Kansas Children's Cabinet website to see the PowerPoint from the December 3rd Early Childhood Stakeholders Group meeting, where the Healthcare Navigators from Kansas team presented on guidance and assistance that is available to be able to access this open enrollment opportunity. Those navigators are ready and willing to help you work through this process. And so there's some really good information that can be found from that meeting. The Early Childhood Recommendations Panel meets the third Friday of every month, and we always want to keep you informed of what is going on with that. Our next meeting is scheduled for this Friday, December 17th. And you can always watch these meetings live on this YouTube link that's provided here, as well as going back to previous meetings, and you can see the recordings and materials from those as well. And we always want to invite you to share or engage in whatever way you need to. And you can do that either verbally or in written form by contacting me at this email address prior to the meetings. And then that is shared out during the Kansans Open Forum section at the beginning of every panel meeting. And so at this week's meeting, our agenda is going to include a follow-up discussion with members on the Build Back Better Act that was discussed in November. Clayton, we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, thank you. And then we're going to introduce a new parent stipend policy that's going to be available to panel members. And then we're going to review a timeline and a work template for making recommendations that the work groups will then work on during the second half of the meeting, develop those draft recommendations, and then report those back out to the panel at the end of the meeting. So we hope that some of you will consider joining us or reaching out to me if you have any information that you would like to share. The early childhood block grants and preschool pilot grants are still available through next week on Monday, December 20th. So that is the application deadline. These have been available since November 1st. So the Kansas Department of Education and the Children's Cabinet are partnered together to offer these funding opportunities. And the purpose of these grants is to provide early childhood services for Kansas children and families ages birth to kindergarten entry, as well as services for prenatal and family supports. And so the applications can be submitted through the Kansas Common App platform, which you can find here on the Children's Cabinet website, as well as information on how to access technical assistance if you need that. So the applicants will submit this single application through the Common App, and then KSDE and the Children's Cabinet will collaboratively review those applications and make the grant awards. Both of these grants are intended to provide supplemental funding to fill gaps. And so programs applying for them must demonstrate that they are meeting or investing other available financial resources and community support into their programs before requesting the funding. And so that ends our general announcements, and we now move into the programs section of our webinar, which again, we have the team of Lori and Haley joining us from CCCTO to share information on their CDA program and scholarships. So welcome to both of you. And Lori is a familiar face that some of us haven't seen for a while, so she's wearing a different hat now, and we're really happy to see her back. And I believe they're going to start screen sharing, Clayton.
Yes, I will share my screen. Let's see. Can you see that? Yep, great. Okay, so I'll get us started and then I'll hand it off to Verena and she will take us away. So my name is Haley Henick. I'm a program coordinator at Kansas Child Care Training Opportunities, otherwise known as CCCTO, a lot easier to say that short phrase. We are a statewide training office. We're dedicated to providing quality, accessible professional development opportunities to family child care providers, child care center staff, and other early education professionals throughout the state of Kansas. Our vision is that every child succeeds, and our mission is to ensure high quality early education and care through professional development and support for those who work with and on behalf of young children. So we have a couple different projects under the CCCTO umbrella. One of them is workforce development. And I will share in chat our link to our professional development registration. So if you or your staff are looking for professional development opportunities coming up, we have a list of those available on our website. And I do also want to share for anyone else out there who does offer KDHE approved professional development for Kansas providers. We have the ability on our calendar to advertise your training as well. So if that's something that you're interested in advertising your training and having that linked out to whatever site you use for your registration, we are able to do that and happy to do that as well. And I put my email address in chat. So if you're interested in learning more about how that works, you can let me know, reach out. But the two specific things that we're talking about today for our workforce development project include scholarships and our CDA resource center. So I'll start us off with scholarships. We presented about our scholarships earlier this year on this webinar, but we've had a few updates to our funding availability for scholarships. So we wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of what those opportunities were. And I'm putting in chat now our link to our scholarship page, so you can go there to learn more as well. So we have one of the opportunities we have for scholarships is our progression of professional development scholarships. So our eligibility has been expanded. Previously, you had to be a Kansas resident and you had to be a DCF provider to be eligible for these scholarships, but we've kind of removed some of those requirements and expanded it. So as long as you work in a licensed Kansas child care program serving children, any children aged birth to 12 years, you will be eligible for these scholarships. So that opens the pool up a little bit to people who might not have been eligible previously. When we also previously required that you were employed for at least 6 months at your current place of employment, and that requirement has been removed as well. So if that's something that you were aware of before with those scholarships, you don't have to worry about that. If you have staff that are new and wanting to take some training and wanting some scholarships to help with that, they will be eligible for these as well. So the progression of professional development scholarships target a couple different types of training. We have in-service training, and those can be opportunities for clock hours or CEUs. And then we also have scholarships for higher education. So early childhood courses at 2-year or 4-year Kansas institutions. So the in-service training scholarships include things like online and in-person training, statewide conferences, and national conferences. So the new one there is national conferences. We previously did not have scholarships for national conferences, and now we do. The only requirement for those are that the conference has to award CEUs. For both state and national conferences, we also are able now to provide funding for both travel and lodging. There is a maximum requirement or limit there for national conferences. The maximum is $1,800 per person per calendar year, and then up to $3,600 per program per calendar year. So there are definitely some opportunities there for people to take advantage of higher national conferences like NAOIC or 0 to 3 or any of those other national conferences as long, again, as they award CEUs. And then for our higher education scholarships, so we previously were able to award higher education scholarships only at two-year institutions if they were early childhood courses, but we're now able to expand that to four-year Kansas institutions. And to break that down a little bit, two-year institutions, if you're interested in an associate's degree in early childhood, ECE certificates, CDA preparatory courses, or even courses for your Kansas Director's Credential. And for the Kansas Director's Credential, those courses can be early childhood or business. As long as they're courses that are called out by that Director's Credential as being required, we could provide scholarships for those. But I do want to say that we will first point people in the direction of the Kansas Promise Act scholarship if you come to us to CCCTO and you're wanting to have a scholarship for an associate's degree. We want to make sure that people are taking advantage of the Kansas Promise Act scholarship first. But you can always reach out to us and ask, and we can talk you through what those options are. And then for four-year institutions, those are limited to bachelor's degree early childhood courses. But we also allow it both two-year and four-year. If someone comes to us wanting a scholarship for maybe a one-off course of, for a teacher's licensure or something like that, we could provide scholarships for that as well. And the biggest change about our higher education scholarships is that previously we were paying 80% of tuition on a reimbursement only basis, and we're now able to pay for 100% of tuition prepaid, so that can be paid before you take the course. But we have to receive verification that there were no other funds available. So CCCTO would be the payer of last resort for those scholarships. That's still a big change, something that we're hoping that will make it a lot easier for people to take advantage of those scholarships. Okay, and then our other scholarships are specific to the CDA. So we have CDA credential application fee scholarships. Those are available for first-time CDA candidates and people who are renewing their CDAs. And that's just for you've completed all of the pre-application steps, you're ready to apply for your CDA, and you just need a scholarship for the cost of the application fee that the council charges. So for first-time candidates, that would be a scholarship that covers the $425 cost of the application, and for renewal, the $125 cost of the application. So that is, again, if you just need that credential application fee scholarship. But what Lorena is going to go into a lot more detail about is our new opportunity for both training and application fees. So kind of like a bundled scholarship. So we have the ability, or we have the opportunity now to provide scholarships for people who need the training, they need all of the pre-application support, and they need the credential fee application as well. So for first-time candidates, like I said, that includes training. It includes resources and portfolio support, and then it includes the credential application fee. For people who are looking at renewal, the scholarship would include any training that you need, a membership. A membership is required for renewal applicants. So we would potentially be able to pay for state membership in early childhood organizations. And then again, the credential application fee. So the whole exciting part of that is that it's a much more streamlined process. You get everything paid for. But I will let Lorena take over now, and she'll go into all the detail about all the fun stuff included in that.
Thank you, Haley. And I'll just let you move to the next slide. And Haley did a great job of just giving the highlights, and I'll move on here in a minute just to the next slide that will just kind of show you the difference between what we'll refer to as CDA 1.0 and CDA 2.0. And 2.0 is our new exciting scholarship opportunity, which I think the first thing that I should tell you is that we have 100 scholarships available. 90 of those are allocated to initial CDA opportunity, and 10 of those we've allocated to the renewal. And the application link is actually available on the CCTO website right now. You can go to the CDA Resource Center tab on our site and fill out that application if you're ready to start that process. So if you want to go ahead and go to that next slide. So here I just broke down a little bit about what the differences are so that you can see. Haley already mentioned that we've kind of streamlined everything for you, and wanted to point out some of the differences. So you can see in 1.0, there were some requirements that are no longer a part of the 2.0. No longer does your program have to be, has to accept DCF subsidy that's been taken away. Don't necessarily have to be a resident of Kansas, but your program definitely has to be licensed by KDHE. So you may you may actually live in Missouri, but you work in Kansas. So we definitely have some of those border folks that cross over every single day. So that's no longer a barrier for you. We're happy that you're working in Kansas. Then also too, prior to 2.0, you actually took a orientation to the CDA program prior to starting the CDA track. That now has changed, and that orientation course is a part of the track. So you get to go ahead and submit your application and start that track. And the orientation is a part of that process. So it's not something you have to do before applying. So you apply, we get you going, we get you started. It just makes it a smooth process there for you. And it's also just a one application. Referring back to the slide that Haley showed you, there were multiple applications potentially that you could have maybe filled out if you were maybe applying for an application that was available to do some CDA training, or an application potentially for the CDA credential application itself. Those would have been separate applications. Now this is a one application, one time that you can complete, and it comes with everything included. And the orientation you'll be enrolled in automatically, so that those things are taken care for you. So it's very simplified, smooth. It's just a kind of a one-stop shop here. So again, it's the 2.0 is a little, it is smooth for you as well. You want to move on then, Haley? Thank you. Some other differences that you can see. One of the biggest differences here is that we have some built-in support. CCTO has always been great about providing support, but doesn't mean that it was intentionally built in. Well, this particular 2.0 CDA scholarship is built in with supports. So first of all, there's an orientation support session that each individual participant would get. And then there's a 45-minute session that's built in for that individual professional development planning, which is essential to just letting them start their course planning with a destination in mind, where they really want to go, where that track is going to lead them. And there's some additional in between sessions built in, and then a final before they get into their portfolio and ending that whole entire track. So of course there's assistance always available for them, but again, these are intentional supports built. So they've got that kind of secure wraparound that they need as they go through the entire process. And we know that some participants will go a little slower, some will go a little quicker. So support will be there as it's needed. Some of the other differences you will see is just when materials are available, or if they're available. With this particular 2.0, CDA portfolio packets are going to be available to anyone who completes the portfolio courses, where before they were available only to the CDA training track participants. So that is a little bit different too. So we're just really excited to work with all the new participants. I will tell you that before we even had this particular webinar, and before Haley even got the application posted, we were already getting calls and questions and pre kind of applications. So there is a lot of excitement about the scholarship opportunity, and we're just really excited to start the journey with these 100 participants. So I think at this time, Debbie, if there's opportunity, if there are any questions, we would love to answer any, if there are any.
Arena, did you want to talk more about the renewal as well?
Oh, well, I did. I forgot all about the, I got so excited about the initial, I forgot about the renewal. The biggest change, really the difference between the initial and the renewal, because the requirements are essentially the same. The one thing about the renewal is that prior to 2.0, there was not an orientation course for the renewal. So that's a brand new course that's been built for the renewal participant. And I don't, at one point in time, there were 5 years between a CDA renewal. Now it's 3 years between a CDA renewal. So that's quite a bit of time, really, between completing and starting again. So that orientation to that whole process really can be daunting. So this course being available to kind of lay the scope of the land really is really a good foundation to build as they go into this. So that's there for them to support them. And they too, these providers who are coming into this, these participants have 2 technical assistance coaching supports built into their program. Again, the initials have 5, and the renewals have 2. Haley, you did mention the membership on your slide. One of the requirements for renewal is that they are associated with a professional organization in the early care fields. We have built within this scholarship that we will pay for an in-state membership. So that will come with this renewal package, with this renewal scholarship. So whether it's with a child care coalition or another state or national organization, we will, well, I said national, but it's a state organization, we will pay for that membership for them so that they are current when they send in that renewal, which will be a requirement of the renewal application. So those are exciting pieces that will help support that. And I should say, one of the most important things is CCTO isn't doing this all by themselves. This is definitely supported by recovery dollars, administered by DCF. So we want to thank them for their support. And again, it's absolutely courtesy of the recovery dollars that makes this all possible for our child care providers. So happy for that too. Thank you.
Is there anyone that wants to come off mute and ask a question, or you can also feel free to put that in the chat as well.
So I will say that we do have limited spots for the combined CDA scholarship for the training and the application fee. So if you or anyone you know is interested, please visit that link that we shared to apply, and Lorena will help walk you through that whole process and make it as smooth as possible.
Haley, I have a question. How do you feel like we're doing on the people around Kansas who are able to complete that observation?
I know that it's still an issue. We've heard from candidates who are coming to us for training that sometimes it is difficult to find PD specialists. So the professional development specialists that the council authorizes to conduct the verification visits for people going through their CDA. People are able to find them, and if they're not able to find them, they can contact the council and sometimes work with the council to get additional help on finding someone. So I say people are able to find them, but there is also still difficulty in some cases, which is when you would contact the council to ask for some help there. But I think that with the numbers that we have available, it would still be reasonable to expect that they would be able to make it through the process.
Okay, great, thanks.
Sorry, Debbie, and I might just say to that point, if any of you are interested in being professional development specialists, please look into it, because there are people across the state that need people to act in that capacity as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation. And I'm just sitting here thinking, as I'm hearing what you're telling us, it's so exciting, and it's just hopefully helping to address some of the barriers and challenges that our early childhood workforce has right now. So this is very helpful. And I liked the comment of the one-stop shop, because that makes it easy for everyone, hopefully. So thank you. Please get in touch with CCCTO if anyone has any further questions or is interested in looking into this on the links that they provided today. And so if there are no further questions, I will move on to the next segment of our program, which is going to be a mini sense-making session from the Our Tomorrows team. And there's Jen. She just popped up. Hi, Jen. Jen Heeg is here with us to get that started.
Hey, everybody. Happy early holidays. I'm glad to see so many people on the call. I wasn't sure. Can everybody hear me okay? And are you seeing my slides is the other question. Yeah, okay. Great.
Yes, there we go. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm gonna just be sure, I'm gonna be working this alone today, and I wanna be sure that I can see everybody's chats as they're coming in. And right now I cannot, so sorry about the extra second there.
And I can help you keep track of the chat as well, Jen.
Okay, that would be really great, actually. I'll just pull up the slides then, and we'll worry about that for now. So thanks everybody for letting us have a few minutes of your day. My name is Jen Heeg. I work at the Center for Public Partnerships and Research, which we call CPPR at KU. And if you can give me just in your picture a thumbs up if you've heard of Our Tomorrows. I'm trying to get a sense of how much intro I should be giving every month when we run these sessions. And we will run a poll next month to try to get even better sense, but I'm seeing some thumbs, but not a ton as I scroll through. All right, well, that gives me a good sense. So what I've been trying to do is kind of talk about a different aspect of the Our Tomorrows process every month, but starting with the really bare bones, at least intro to the project as a whole. So Our Tomorrows is a project, it's run out of CPPR, and we use a computer program that's called SenseMaker, and we collect stories from people all across Kansas. We actually run it in a couple of other states as well. And the cool thing about it is that when people write their story, they also take part in the analysis by answering questions, and then we're able to look at the patterns in a quantitative way. So SenseMaker allows the patterns to be identified and explored to gain new understanding about what families need to thrive. Typically, we use these stories and analysis to run the sense-making sessions like what we're doing today. And then we have stakeholders that, like y'all, interpret what's happening in the stories, and then hopefully at some points we get to a point of suggesting small scale solutions, which we call actionables. And so right now if you were to click on the live story prompt, this is what you would see. To share a story, remember a time when it felt like your family or another family you know was thriving or just surviving. And then share a story about what was happening at that time. So the stories themselves are the data points. And really what we do as a team when we're doing our analysis is we look at the patterns. So if you haven't seen it, here's a screenshot on the left side of one of the many ways that you can submit a story to Our Tomorrows. This particular screenshot goes through KCCTF. And since the Story Bank launched in 2019, we've collected over 5,000 stories from every single county in Kansas. So it's a big ongoing effort. And so far, the stories have been used in a few main ways. They help inform state level policymakers about the concerns, needs, and perspectives of everyday Kansans. And in partnership with different organizations in different parts of Kansas that have contributed to collecting these stories, we have those folks use the stories to design local actionables. So in addition to that, we also want people to be kind of engaging with this data and make sense at their own personal level too. So what resonates with you and what might help you change your understanding of the system that we're all working in. So as part of the methodology, we have these sessions to identify patterns and connections between the stories. And for about 3 months now, we've been doing this here with you. We had to skip last month because we were having a really great conversation. But way back in October, if you were here and you remember, we talked about how Our Tomorrows was more than just a story bank. I think that's one of the most common misconceptions about Our Tomorrows. It's really about the patterns themselves and how the data creates patterns. So today I'm going to spend a couple of minutes actually discussing the process, how sense making fits into the bigger picture, and what I mean about patterns. And just really quickly, if you look at the right side of this, if it's not already clear, and we have discussed this before, on the triangle, every single one of those dots, we'd be able to expand out and see a story. But what we can see that's really interesting here in this example is that most of the stories tend to cluster in a couple different parts. So we're able to see those patterns on a bigger level. All right. Okay, so we like to show this slide when we're talking about the project, and it goes through the 6 phases that make up the Our Tomorrows process. And I wanted to kind of highlight how it shows up in real life. So the story collection part you can see is phase 3, which is when we're training the story collectors, gathering the stories, and then having people self-interpret. That's just one part of the bigger process, and we definitely don't stop there. So our team then does a lot of work at the phase 4 level of identifying patterns on an ongoing basis. And a few of those is what we want to talk about today. And then 5 is where we are today, the community sense making process. So I just wanted to note too that this chart makes it look like a really linear kind of process, the Our Tomorrows project. This is maybe overly linear. It's more like a cycle where we're going through kind of all of this stuff at a lot of different times at the same time. And ideally we're learning from the interventions that are happening, and then we're feeding that back into the stories, and it's changing our interpretations. And so we've got a lot of multiple cycles going at once. And so really, it kind of looks more like this if we were to draw out how the process really goes. But if I'm being honest, it kind of looks more like this. So we just wanted to let you know that we jump in at this the Our Tomorrows project at a bunch of different levels. But the idea for us really is about working in complexity and working in systems change. So it means we can't always predict the results of one intervention or activity. Patterns don't stay stable. And in general, this is why we really think about taking bite-sized chunks, making sense within a community, working on small scale solutions, and then iterating from there. So this kind of guides our thinking. All right, so now on to the actual sense-making part. This is the part that our team does together the most often, but 70 heads are much better than a few when it comes to sense making. So today I just wanted to show you all one graphic that our team has compiled looking at patterns since the start of the Our Tomorrows project in 2019 across the thousands of respondents we've had. And here's that chart that I wanted to have us discuss and make some sense of today. So basically what this chart says is if we're focused on access to childcare, as access to childcare increases, we're also seeing people respond that their home life is becoming more secure, that they see increases in thoughtful planning guiding their decision-making for their family, and they're also experiencing increases in social supports. And the higher up that is, the more people are saying they're feeling that thing. On the other side, on the bottom, as access to childcare decreases, we also see people saying that their home life becomes more chaotic and that it is more threatening and that there's more things happening beyond the family's control. So one thing I want to be really clear about is we're not saying access to childcare causes these things. We're just saying as people say they have access to childcare and that that's an easy and affordable thing for them, these other things are happening. And as that becomes a more difficult and more expensive thing for people to access, they're also experiencing things beyond their control more generally. So I hope that makes sense, kind of that difference between what might look like causation and what we're saying is really strongly related, but we're not, exactly sure about how the correlation works. But we really just wanted to step back and have a conversation about, with people on this call who have so many diverse experiences and who have worked in this field for a long time and have a bunch of different perspectives. We want to know if your experience kind of validates this and if it makes you think of stories that have happened that you've seen in your own work or in your own life. And we'd love to hear if you want to share any of that, like, for example, what increases in thoughtful planning might look like and how that might be related to childcare. And then also what have you seen work in terms of interventions or things that relations in the community? Just some general reflections on that. What are successful strategies? Does including dad or grandma in a home visit help? And would you call that an increase in social supports? Just kind of like, what is this prompt for you? Essentially are our questions. And then what are things you do as a provider? And what are some lessons learned that might be actionable at the program level, but also at a bigger policy level? So that's what we're hoping to spend a little bit of time making sense of today. So you can type your reactions into the chat. I'm going to put those questions that I just read out up here on the slide and put the graphic back up. And we're just going to take a few minutes to talk about it. So oops, didn't mean to do that. You're welcome to come off mute or type in the chat, which I've now been able to pull up. Thank you, Debbie, for adding the link to share a story. Does this resonate with folks? Does this not resonate? Does it seem so obvious it's not worth making sense of? Or is it just too close to Christmas cookies time?
Well, I'm going to come off, Jen, and just speak to a personal story on behalf of my daughter that just had a new baby. She's 3 months old now. But, there's so much truth to what it says when you have access to childcare, because she fortunately was able to find a wonderful home-based provider to watch her daughter when she went back to work about a month ago. But it just really does help her feel more secure, the peace of mind, increasing the thoughtful planning. I mean, obviously she was trying to get a new routine under control and what might that look like, but just having the consistency and the support of her provider has really helped get all of that stuff in place. And so I'm sure that a lot of other people on here have experienced similar things, but that's the upside to her experience.
Thank you, Debbie, for that. Can I just follow up and ask, was it difficult for her to find somebody who was affordable and available?
Fortunately, she was able to use the same person that my other granddaughter has been going to for 3 years. And so by, the word of mouth and the reference and the planning ahead for several months prior to the baby being born, then that was all able to happen, pretty seamlessly, but I know that that's definitely not always the case. So she got very lucky.
I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, any thoughts from other folks here? Oh, I'm just seeing in the chat, Michelle said, stability throughout the home comes with consistency in other environments. As foster care providers, as well as an ECE advocate, I see this in their homes as well. Support systems are key. Thank you. I think that is a really important point to bring up. So, if I were to design this kind of diagram in a more like brainstormy way, in addition to access to childcare, we also are seeing stability in these other systems being really important as well, right? Karen, infant caregivers are hard to find sometimes. So I actually, just random story, I live in Washington, D.C., and I work remotely. And here in D.C., we have universal 3K and 4K, and still have this shortage on infant providers that I think a lot of you guys at the policy level have talked about and discussed, where the cost of infants is a lot more. And so having that be affordable when you don't have 3 and 4 year olds kind of paying into the same system has caused its own special set of problems. But I think the consistency being that infant caregivers are hard to find in both contexts for really different reasons, and something to be aware of when we're making some policy recommendations. Jennifer said, I think it's good to have Kansas information that looks similar to data gathered on a national level. Yeah, and we can also split up the Kansas information. Depending on the amount of respondents, we can split it up down as small as the county level. But we're starting to do some more looking at the different regions and how this stuff maybe varies from region to region. COVID, of course, threw a bit of a wrinkle into the types of data that we were collecting, and we spent a lot of time looking at how COVID impacted stuff. But I think, for me at least, in the immediate future, just going back and looking at regional differences across time, holding COVID kind of constant, is going to be what I'm going to spend the early part of my year on. Karen said it really puts a strain on the family, and Mary's agreeing with Michelle. And Haley is saying, I think these things are impacted by maybe more than just access to childcare, but by access to reliable childcare. Haley, did you want to say anything more about what that means to you? Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I guess I could just say, finding childcare for an infant was hard enough for my family. And once we did find childcare, it was wonderful, but it didn't end up necessarily being super reliable. So we had childcare, but couldn't really rely on it. So I think that could put people in, like, yes, they have access to childcare, but maybe they're still dealing with some of these things that people who don't have access to childcare are dealing with as well, because what they have is not reliable.
It's a really great and really important kind of real life point of how this stuff plays out. Even though somebody would be able to check the box and say, I have childcare. What does that look like? And that's the benefit of something like Our Tomorrows, and being able to both read stories where somebody might give that nuance, but also have this community sense making where you can point that out. So thank you.
Hey, Jen.
Yes.
This is Ariana.
Ariana.
Hi. I just hopped on the call. But I really appreciate what's here on the screen. And I was just wondering, well, one of the great things about Our Tomorrows is that not only do you get these stories that help us identify those gaps in needs and services, but you also get stories about what is working. And I noticed, Jen, that you have on this slide what are things that you've seen work? And I think that's always really important to remember, that there are folks out there trying new and different things, and they can all be things that we look towards and look to for support and sort of instruction and guidance. And so I just wonder if anyone has any thoughts on maybe as service providers, what they have seen work. And then I also want to say that Nice in the chat said that they're surprised that to see more things occurring beyond the family's control on the spectrum is sort of, maybe it's a sign that lots of hardships are being felt really acutely. And I think that's a really good point to make. So Nice, I just want to say thanks and perhaps encourage people to think on that a little bit more too. And I'm done interrupting now, Jen, sorry.
No, Ariana, in case everybody's not aware, Ariana's on the team, the Our Tomorrow's team, and has been on the team for much longer than me. So you're never interrupting, Ariana. Thank you for that. And I think you're pointing to something that we're always trying to learn in these sessions around the question about what are things you've seen work. We've got a lot of people with a lot of different experiences here. And so if anybody has stories to share, that's a great point for prompting. Thank you.
This is Michelle. I had commented already about stability and foster care and an advocate, and I just generalize the story a little bit because I have to be careful when I talk about foster care. But for example, is dealing with high quality care has given us the opportunity for the children to heal and to have stability, and to be able to have trauma-informed teachers has been incredible. So that level of quality is really, really essential for not just every single child to get a team that can respond appropriately to emotions, but also to be able to validate and give opportunities for children to understand and grow and have the opportunities to grow past this healing and learn concepts that other children are getting those opportunities on a regular basis too. So that stability and quality really comes together, and addressing the fact that I wonder if you can feel that more acutely in a family is we had a little less stable environment at one point of childcare. So we had good access, but it was a little less stable without those support systems in place with trauma-informed care and some of those things. And it made a giant impact on our stability as a foster home. So I think it is really a great conversation surrounding this is even when things are a little tumultuous in a family, like your experience is a lot of outside factors. If you have stability in your childcare system, you're able to take that impact a little bit better or differently than if you're struggling to find access or good quality on top of those environmental factors that are influencing. So I think it's a great conversation to elaborate upon.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That's really helpful. And y'all are really helping guide me, I have to say, in the way I'm thinking about these issues. I'm relatively new to the childcare conversation. Most of my work has been in positive youth development. And one thing that I have found really interesting is thinking through what quality looks like in a lot of different contexts and the relationship between quality and all these other factors you're talking about. I can see safety on one end of the spectrum, but talking about stability and being trauma informed as kind of aspects of quality that should be universal. I think these are really, really great things for us to be able to dig into as we're looking at patterns in the next year. I'm taking notes and also happy that this is being recorded because y'all are giving me some gems. So thank you. I'm checking the time, and I know we probably just have one more minute, and I'm seeing some great comments in chat here that I probably can't read and respond to intelligently, but I'm glad that they're here. about accessible childcare. And Clara's about with teen parents. Oh, interesting. Much on their plate with school work and tending to their little one. And that might be another group for us to look into in the future. So, and actually it's a good place to close. If you all have particular questions or patterns you'd like for us to dig into, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. And I will say, after the community sense making and our mess of a process, a very complex process, is when we do some planning for action and developing some safe to fail approaches, and we just keep iterating. And so, yes, please send feedback, questions, requests for mini sessions, topics to talk about to ourtomorrows@ku.edu. And hopefully we can keep the conversation going into 2022. Thank you so much, everybody. And again, I will be saving those chats, so please keep them coming if you have anything else to add. And I will pass it back to you, Debbie. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you to all of our participants today who contributed to that sense-making session, and we look forward to having more of those in the future to be able to give you that data that you need to keep moving all of this work forward. So I am just going to wrap up the rest of our meeting very briefly today. Clayton, if you're able to put the upcoming meeting slide back on for everyone to see, then I will go through that.
One minute, sorry, it's pulling up.
It's fine. There it is. So I did want to point out that our next bi-weekly webinar will not be until January 12th, 2022. We would normally be scheduled to have one in 2 weeks on the 29th, but due to the holiday schedules and everyone's busy lives during this time of the year, we have canceled the December 29th bi-weekly webinar. So we'll see you again here at noon on January 12th. And of course, always please let us know if you have any topics that you're interested in or have information that you would like to share out, as our presenters did today. As I mentioned earlier, our recommendations panel meeting is scheduled for this Friday at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then we have our next cabinet and stakeholder group meeting scheduled for February 4th. The cabinet meeting being in the morning, the stakeholder group meeting in the afternoon, and the link is here to register for that stakeholder group meeting if you're interested. And so I just wanted to say in closing that this is our last time together on the webinar for 2021. And so on behalf of the All In for Kansas Kids team and the Children's Cabinet, we just want to take the time to thank you for joining our webinars this year. We hope that by joining, you are able to make connections with individuals, agencies, and organizations that help you make your work easier and move it forward throughout the Early Childhood Network in Kansas. And just thank you for all that you do to enhance the lives of children and families. Your hard work is important and it's appreciated. So please enjoy a safe and relaxing holiday season in whatever way you celebrate. And we are excited to have you join us back here again in 2022. Have a great day, everybody.